Good afternoon and welcome to On TV. Another ward debate for you this afternoon. Certainly hope you're enjoying your Friday, even though it is snowing. I'm sorry, I had to tell you. It's snowing, yes. Ward 5, as I mentioned. And just to explain the format a little bit for you, in case you haven't seen any of our other formats, this is a live production. And our candidates have chosen a number, and that's how they're seated. So completely random. We're going to ask them a question. They have 90 seconds to respond to that question. They'll hear a 20-second before the end bell. And then when they hear a double bell, that means their time is completely up. There will also be a chance for rebuttals around the table, as it were, after they've completed their first answer. I would like to have you welcome Tim Murphy.
Hello again.
Kind of works at On TV on a good morning. And from the Sault Ste. Marie Association of Ratepayers, Lorna Rudolph, who's been with us all week long. Thank you so much,
I'm going to miss you next week, Lorna.
I doubt it.
Okay, so we're going to go and introduce our candidates. Thank you all, first of all, for being here. I'm sure you're about debated out by now. But On TV wants to, we focus on local information. So we thought, who better to talk to than you? So, Ozzie Grandinetti is first, and then Corey Gardy, Matthew Scott, and Frank Fata. So, as I mentioned, we're going to go for a full hour here, and starting the questioning is...
It's me! I get accused of having long-winded questions, so I won't disappoint you. My question is in regard to small-scale industrial tax rates in Sault Ste. Marie. The current tax rate for small-scale industrial facilities is 6.387%, I believe. That's not only the highest of the 5 major cities in Northern Ontario, it's among the highest across the entire province. Council attempted to take the sting out of the 2017 tax increase by spreading it over 10 years, by offering tax reductions for the first 3 years of new construction, and offering incentives for new capital equipment purchases. But local industrial property owners in this separate tax class see these as short-sighted band-aid solutions and barriers to economic success that are in contrast to the city's claim to outside investors that Sault Ste. Marie is open for business. That's my long-winded statement. Now, here's the question. Small-scale industrial taxpayers believe the city will need to find revenue from other municipal budget lines to offset the burden of some of the province's highest industrial tax rates. As a councillor, how would you address their concerns? Ozzie?
Ozzie, if you
can go to the mic.
Oh, watch your step down, Ozzie.
You can stand up.
You're standing.
Yeah.
You can actually step down if you like. Just be careful you don't fall.
Look at that. You're so good, Ozzie.
Now I look shorter now.
No, you look tall now.
First of all, I believe that our industrial rate is one of the highest in the province, and I have a friend that's in the business. He is now competing with a company from Quebec that does the same type of business that he does. They have some of the cheapest industrial rates within Canada, and Quebec has some of the cheapest electrical rates throughout North America. Now, how do you compete with that? His taxes are going up from, I believe it was when he showed me last year when I first got back in, 25,000 to I believe 42,000 within the next 10 years. So how do you do that? Do you raise do you raise the price of your product? Do you eliminate staff? This is the biggest complaint that I've gotten from the industrial sector. I brought it up with the mayor last year, and the mayor and staff, and they all told me that we have to do this. We have to do this. No, you don't. I believe if we were to operate the city like a business, then we could keep our taxes low. Up until then, I think we should bring it back down to a normal rate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Corey Gardy, what are your thoughts?
Thanks. Admittedly, there needs to be some work done in and around taxes. I think the current council and mayor have done some work, have been responsible in budgeting. They've done it earlier. They've done it more thoroughly than they have in the past. We have to take a balanced approach. I understand the challenge of the industrial tax rate, but you know, we have some evidence that the industrial tax rate hasn't inhibited a company from wanting to come here. Okay, Noront, we made the final. We made the final 2. I think council and the mayor have done some good work in and around it. We need to find efficiencies. There's no question, but we can't do it at the expense. We can't do it at the expense of services. Now, if and when we lower the industrial tax rate, we have to be sensitive that it doesn't impact residential homeowners, because all of us know what we're hearing from residential owners. They want us to work hard to keep our tax rates down. You know, how are we going to do that? We're going to do it by broadening the tax base. We're going to do it by creating jobs of the future here. We're going to do it in concert with the Innovation Center and the post-secondary institutions, working to get knowledge-based jobs that create value to things, that produce things better and faster. I believe that we can work on the industrial tax rate. We just need to be sensitive that it doesn't further burden residential and smaller businesses.
Thank you very much, Corey Gardy. Matthew Scott.
Yeah, so much like the other guys.
You can stand up, you're fine.
Oh, okay. It's
He'll hear you. He'll adjust the sound.
I'm a little taller. Much like the other guys, I would have to agree that some work needs to be done on the industrial tax rate. Clearly, if it's the highest in the province, or one of the highest in the province, and definitely if it is the highest compared to other northern cities, we need to get that in line. Much like Ozzy was saying, it's hard to compete if you have to worry about the burden of taxes, especially when you're doing things industrial, could be countrywide. He is correct. Quebec does have one of the lower rates for electrical, and that's something that we would have to be aware of when you're competing just on even a national scale. I think that we could find efficiencies in the budget to help reduce that. I don't think increasing the industrial tax rate and putting all of our tax issues as a burden on those companies, that costs jobs locally, not just for the people that own it, but for people that are working with these companies. And I think that causes a bigger impact than the tax dollars that it's making up. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Matthew Scott. Frank Fata.
Thank you. One of the problems that I think we have is that we tend to think of industries and small businesses. Sometimes they're numbered companies, they're entities. We tend to think of them as objects. They are people that are the backing of those places. If those places don't do well, if they don't show some kind of a profit, they're going to shut down. They're going to cut down their operations. Just to give you an example, in Elliott Lake back in 1991 or so, when Rio and the Denison mines shut down, that was basically the total industrial area for Elliott Lake. Residential properties, their assessment, their taxes on a $100,000 assessment went from $2,000 to $4,000. So we have to take our industrial sector and also the large commercial and the small commercial. We got to take them all very seriously. Walmart, as an example, I mean, again, that's large commercial. They pay the equivalent of 365 1,100 square foot homes. That's what we're dealing with here. These companies are important to us, not just for the jobs, for the taxes they pay, but if we don't create an environment where they can survive and expand and seed and show the outside people, outside of Sault Ste. Marie, that we are a place to invest, then we got a serious problem on our hands. And this is something that we have to take seriously, and we have to address it. Diversification is important, of course, but we have to make sure that the people are here now, the corporations that are here now, are going to be sustained. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any room for rebuttal, gentlemen? Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Frank just raised his hand.
Frank.
Sometimes 2 minutes just isn't enough, is it, Frank?
Algoma Steel.
Yes.
Our biggest employer, okay? We want to diversify. Of course, we want to diversify. Algoma Steel, approximately 3,000 employees. They already got big challenges with what's going on south of the border with tariffs, 25%. If we don't take that seriously, because they could easily shorten their operation. Tenaris has a big operation in Texas. They could easily uproot the whole operation. If we as councillors don't take that seriously, we're going to be in big trouble. Tenaris is a major employer. They pay a lot of taxes. They hire a lot of people. A lot of them are young people trying to stay in Sault Ste. Marie and then of course further their life. So we got to be very serious about this.
Thank you very much. Yes, Corey.
Okay, so I would argue that there's been a community-wide effort to support Algoma Steel through CCAA. I believe the current council, which you're a part of, Mr. Fata, and the mayor have done what they've needed to do to support that. You know, I believe that Tenaris is committed to the community. I don't believe that Tenaris wants to just uproot and leave our community. I think they're committed to us. I think they know the good work that the city's done and the municipal and provincial representatives to help them navigate their difficult times. So I want you to know that if you're a large-scale business or a small business, that I'm committed to working with you, and I have faith that you are indeed dedicated to this community and want to employ people here. Thank you.
Thank you. Last call? Go ahead, Ozzy.
Sure.
I just have to disagree with Corey on one thing, and he says that Tenaris is committed to the community. I don't think any one business is committed to any community. All I believe is that the almighty dollar speaks. So they're going to just uproot and move somewhere else. And I believe it was Frank Fata that mentioned they're in Texas. Tenaris has a big operation in Texas. Non-union state, or sorry, should I say, right to work state. So if it's going to cost them an X amount of dollars to operate their business, they're cheaper. I think they're going to just uproot and move wherever they can. Thank you.
Thank you. Last call for rebuttal? And now,
You already had yours. you only got one rebuttal. You can't have Matthew's.
You were asking all of us.
okay, now Corey, you're up first with a question from Lorna.
Will you support an independent, comprehensive, line-by-line audit of the city's financial records each 4 years as a new council is elected, so that at the start of each council's term, both the citizens of this community and the elected people and the administrators know to the penny this city's financial position? I am not talking about the city budget. I'm talking about the financial records. I'm talking about a line-by-line review of expenditures. Were the estimates correct? Did we get value for our tax dollars? I want to assure you I'm not talking about malfeasance, misfeasance, or corruption. I'm talking line by line to explore savings and efficiencies that would enable the city to provide more or better services at no increase in taxes.
Thanks for the question, Lorna. I mentioned it before, and I think the council and mayor have done a good job improving how they budget. Now, in terms of a line-by-line audit every 4 years, if someone brings that motion to council, I'm going to consider it like I would any other motion. But I think we need to remember that, you know, this is going to be done by a third party, and it's not going to be done for free. So there's a lot of talk about, you know, saving tax dollars. We just have to make sure that we're going to get the bang for our buck conservatively. And I'm no accountant, but I think it's going to cost probably a couple $100,000 every 4 years to do a thorough, comprehensive third party audit. A lot of people who talk about us using too much money on consultants and studies also advocate for this third-party assessment. You know, it's a third party. It's a consultant coming in and taking a look at your books. If someone brings a motion to council and it's written well and it's explained well, I will consider it like any other. And if it's the will of council overwhelmingly, I would not be a holdout and say, no, we're not going to do it. I'd be supportive.
Thanks, Corey. Matthew, what are your thoughts?
Much like Corey, I would take a look at the cost involved with this, but I definitely do support it. I'm a numbers guy. I would want to even be involved in it in any way that I could. I love looking at that kind of stuff. I've always been involved in some sort of budgeting work, depending on what my job is at the time. I know at the hospital, I'm a data analyst. I do some stuff regarding the budget. I take a deep interest in things like that. I do happen to know as well that certain companies, I'm not sure in regards to municipalities, will actually do it based on any savings they find. They take a percentage of those savings rather than have a large upfront fee. So everybody wins in that sense, because if they find savings, then the city gets the savings and they get a portion of it. There are a few different options that you'd have to take a look at, but once again, if it was being supported by all the other councillors, I definitely wouldn't hold out on that. I think that it was something that I would be heavily involved in even. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fata.
I'm known to be a little outspoken. So I will begin by saying this. The current PC government did just that. And they found that there was a lot of discrepancy in the final figures. It was a very costly exercise, but it was done. But the fact remains, there was a result that we all anticipated. We have to look at it this way. We have to show transparency. That's the key catchword these days, transparency. When you say no to something, it's, oh, well, he's trying to hide something. We don't want to come across that way. I've never wanted to come across that way. We have to be very open, in terms of our committees, in terms of anything that we do at City Hall, we have to be open. And this is something that I think has to be looked at. But the cost is going to play a role. So just like Corey Gardy said, we have to look at the bottom line. What's it going to cost us? And I would be open to that. Of course I would. But we have very good accountants locally involved in the process that goes on at City Hall, where they give us very good information, very good numbers, and the city's rating right now is AA minus. So we are obviously showing that we are very frugal with our money. We're showing that we're spending our money wisely, and that's what people want to see: transparency and good accountability.
Thank you, Ozzy. Your thoughts?
Yes, I do agree with having a line-by-line audit. I read a report some time ago, I believe it was in the National Post or Toronto Sun, that for every $100,000 spent on a core service report, I believe there's $1.5 million in savings. So if I'm re-elected, I will support, I will bring forward a motion to have a core service review and go through every department to see where we could save. I also think, and I've said this before, the budget process, the city or finance committee should go to each department and tell them that this is how much money we have for you, and this is what you're going to get. You're going to have to make ends meet with this, rather than each department come to us, the council, and they fearmonger and tell us that they can't operate unless they get a percentage of the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Any rebuttal? Yes. Go ahead, Corey.
I have faith in the city staff. Mr. Fada talked about how, there are good people working there. I agree with him. I think the approach of telling departments this is how much money you have and work with it would lead inevitably to some services that people rely on, that some people deem discretionary, being cut. And that's not something that I would support. I would be supportive if the will of council overwhelmingly wanted an audit, as is mentioned, and I like Matthew, Mr. Scott would do my homework in that regard, but I am not in favor of telling city departments, this is what you got, do what you can with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further thoughts? Yes, Frank.
I too have been on the finance committee these past several years. We're not necessarily privy to things that others are not. Once we come up with our decisions, it goes to open council, and our finance committee meetings are open to the public. We do have the media there. We have individuals coming there. It is important that people see that we are trying our best. I've been one who's been pushing for things like every department should reduce their department by 2%, right across the board. There's things that we try as individual councillors, but the will of council doesn't always agree with individual councillors. I've been one of these types that tries to be very, very aggressive that way, tries to hold all the department heads to account, and show that we can do things, not cutting Sunday bus service. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about finding ways to streamline operations. Thank you.
Thank you. Further thoughts? We're moving on then. Matthew Scott, you're up first with a preamble from Timothy.
I would like to point out that Lorna's first question and my first question were exactly the same number of lines on a page. So
conveys it in a more lovely way.
Okay, I'm going to get mean now.
And I would like to point out that his is 12-point font and mine's 15.
Why does everybody pick on me? All right. Transit. Okay, so with Ward 5 encompassing some of Sault Ste. Marie's most rural areas, I would imagine one of the major concerns of its constituents is ensuring they receive municipal services equivalent to taxpayers who live and work in other wards. As a council member representing the interests of residents from areas like Red Rock, Sunnyside, and Pointe-à-Pitre, and businesses like the Sault Ste. Marie Airport Development Corporation, JD Aero, and Arauco, that's no easy feat, especially when it comes to public transit. What have you heard from Ward 5 residents and business owners about transit concerns, and as a councillor, how would you address those issues?
So, having gone door to door throughout the ward these past several months, transit has been brought up several times. There are a lot of different concerns that people have. Some of them do involve places like the Flakeboard plant. I happen to know that a big complaint that I got, as well as these other guys on Allen Side Road, is how quickly the trucks are moving. So that's one transit issue that I think we could try to take a look at, and I know Ozzy's talked about this before. It's hard to do. You put police there, They take a look, and then they just the trucks radio to each other and they end up speeding off. So I think that's one improvement for the residents in that area. For public transit, we are lacking. I know personally, I live on Lees Bay Road out in Ward 5, rural area. I can't take a bus without walking to the corner of Nixon, I think, is probably the closest place I have to. And beyond that, to take the bus anywhere in the city, I'm gonna have a long ride. I think that we're looking at some things in the city. I have heard about potentially looking at almost like an app, like a ride sharing program. That's great. But as I said even before, it's 2018. Maybe we should try and open the door to Uber or Lyft, get some of those things in. Those help people. I've read some other cities using those to help bolster their public transit. So they had some sort of agreement with these companies where they could kind of reduce the price and allow people to use them in the more rural areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Frank.
Yeah, this is definitely a large problem too. I mean, and like everybody else here, we've talked to people. They used to be able to get to work within 45 minutes or so. Now it's taking well over an hour. A lady over on Prentice the other day, she was very upset because her son, who's I think he's got some challenges, but he has a job up on Great Northern Road, but he can't get there in time, so she's got to drive him every morning around 6 a.m. These are kind of things that we're dealing with. Studies have been done. We rely on studies. They're done by outsiders, but they are the professionals. They're supposed to know about these things. These studies have been done. Now we have a six-month window where we're going to see and kind of review it. Then it's going to fall. So it's going to lead up to about a year's worth of reviewing to see how things are going. We know there's issues. The city is widespread. They're trying to deal with the hospital site. There's areas where they're getting buses going both ways. In some cases, that's a good thing. In other cases, people complain about that. So it works both ways. But cost is always an issue. We have to look at ways to include Algoma and Sioux College, where we get them involved with the students so that they get a student pass, which is part of their tuition. It wouldn't necessarily be that much, but it'd be so helpful. They just walk on a bus. That'd be a great opportunity for the city to earn some funds, and at the same time would help us to make the service more available to everybody. And of course, in the rerouting of it all, hopefully make it more available to those people in the outlying areas.
Thanks, Frank. Ozzy.
Since this transit revitalization that came to council a few months ago, current council, we haven't had more complaints than before. We had businesses on the corner of Great Northern and Fourth Line. They lost staff because the staff members cannot get there after the new bus changes. I have a lady that lives in the Cooper Street apartments. She used to be able to catch the bus at the corner of Cooper and Second Line. The bus would go around, she'd get to the Cambria Mall at the bank, do her banking, no stops, no transfers, no nothing. Now she can't do it. She has to transfer once or twice to get up there. Staff has been very good with her, trying to work with her to get her there quickly. They told her, well, rather than cross Second Line, because Second Line is hard to cross at any time of day, she could walk. She's 84 years old, she's legally blind, walk to Gooley Avenue, cross Gooley Avenue, Second Line, walk back to Cooper Street on the south side, catch the bus there. Now, how do you tell an 84-year-old lady that's legally blind to do this? She's always caught the bus. Never had any issues till now. As I mentioned last night, I strongly support ride sharing, which is one of the things that I'm going to bring up to council within the first year if I'm re-elected. Most municipalities around the world are doing this. Subsidized. Innisville is saving millions of dollars. Brampton is going this route. London, England, Arlington, Texas. Let's take my street for an example. I'm at the tail end. I live on Nixon Road. I'm at the tail end. I used to have one bus that came on my street with very little people on it. Now I have two, which I think is a waste. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yes.
So, if we're talking about transit, going door to door, this is what I've heard. I've heard from seniors who need to get places and can't as well as they did prior to the optimization. I've heard, like Mr. Fata has, of families caring for older people or children or young adults with developmental needs who need to get back and forth to work, and it's not happening as it used to. The buses aren't running early enough, they're not running late enough. I believe that, the guys and ladies who drive the bus need to be consulted. From what I understand, there's going to be a joint committee of drivers and management to get to the bottom of what needs to get done, because nobody knows the buses like the riders and the drivers. I also agree we should look at some ride sharing programs. I believe we need more non-motorized trails west of Carmen's Way. Over the course of the next 4 months, I want to do that. It's a matter of accessibility to people, and it's equaling the playing field for those people who don't drive. I think we have to look at how we develop our city. Our community, say, is 75,000 people. It's very widespread geographically. I think we have to encourage development when developers want to develop neighborhoods, that they don't do them too far east or west or north, that we have to make sure that we have manageable neighborhoods and a manageable community. There's a lot to be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
They're all jumping. Ooh, it's a free-for-all.
No, I do agree with Corey on having more bike paths and whatnot in throughout the West End, throughout the community, but we have 6-7 months of winter here. Look at the weather today. It's horrible weather. Who wants to ride a bike on a day like today? I do support, like, staff and council. They always go to see a consultant. Waste hundreds of thousands of dollars on consultants, when I think they should have just asked the bus drivers. Formed a committee with the bus drivers. These guys are on the streets. They know how to change the routes, what routes to revitalize. Oh, maybe we should go on this road instead of that road. There's so many. This is our busy time. Let's do the buses every half hour on this route, and we'll do every hour on this other route. So I think we should go to the bus. This next term, we should go to the bus drivers and ask them what's the best way we could redo the bus routes. If not, eliminate some of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, Matthew?
Pop in there. I'm going to have to fully agree. We need to get the bus drivers and the riders involved. But also, these guys are all young too, don't worry. But I'm a younger generation, and because of the work that I do and how involved with technology I am, we can use GPSs and we can make maps and we can see these routes, and then we can not consult with consultants, but consult with the drivers and say, these are the existing routes. Here's what it looks like. You can see how long they've stopped for. You can see if they've stopped in an unnecessary area or something like that. We can make that more efficient. I think there's a lot of improvements we could do, but definitely agree getting the riders and the drivers involved. It's key.
Thanks, Matthew. Further thoughts, Frank?
Thank you. We're talking to the drivers, and I can appreciate that. But we just spent a lot of money to bring in professionals. I mean, I understand that, and that's good. I mean, that's where the heart is. It's good to say that the drivers should have an idea, but we spent money on a study by professionals. So I can say, let's bring those drivers into the equation. Of course, I agree with that. But let's face it, these are studies that are done based on the actual layout of the city, where the vital areas are, like the hospitals and the nursing homes and so on are. They are the ones that do the study. But the city right now is spending approximately $400,000 a year to buy one bus. So we are trying to stay on top of this issue. It's an issue just like our main arena there. It's something that it's a cost that we have to incur, and we do that because we want a quality of life for people that they can get around. It's important to also realize that putting the bus for free for seniors, for example, on the voting day or on Rotary Day, is a way to encourage people to use that bus, and hopefully that'll.
At least we're all obeying the second.
You know what? I have to commend all of you.
Yeah.
That's boy, ding ding, and you're.
You just walked away. Your wife has you so well trained, Frank.
God bless Pina.
I know, eh?
Further thoughts on our transit, Corey?
Yeah, transit and getting to and from work creates economic opportunity for people, and it's vital. Accessibility and equity need to be at the forefront of what we do at council. There was another thought I had, but with all the laughter, it escapes me at this moment. So maybe I'll get back to it in another question.
Welcome to my world.
Last call?
Oh, I was just going to say...
That includes you, Mr. Murphy.
If you do more public consultations, go to the seniors in the seniors' homes and the nursing homes. Don't make them come to City Hall. And don't make them go on the computer, because they don't.
or have a smartphone.
There you go. Is it my turn to ask a question?
No, it's mine.
Okay.
And we're going to start with you, Frank, and Lorna is going to ask the next question.
Considering the essential emergency service, fire, police, and EMS, do you consider that there is sufficient manpower available in those services? Or are we trying to make do with insufficient manpower to the possible detriment of our emergency service employees who have to work overtime and are subject to stress that might produce PTSD? Sorry, PTSD. I better get
First thing I'll say is that we just recently hired the new police chief, Chief Stevenson, and he is an exceptional individual. I've met him 4 or 5 times already. I've talked to him about issues. But the same token, the police budget went up by 2.4%. We are dealing with issues, financial issues. 369% retention pay, which is what we pay, the same as they pay downtown Toronto. Retention pay, which is over and above what the paramedics are getting and what the rest of City Hall gets. So this is something that has to be addressed by the government, not by us. I've been pushing for this through our local rep. We've got to sort of harness that issue. Paramedics, 12,000 calls a year. They are stressed out. They're the ones that I would probably say I am most concerned about, okay? We've dealt with fire. We've reduced their numbers. We went through a comprehensive risk assessment. That came down from professionals, and they decided that we can reduce it from 78 to 68, okay? So we were able to bring that cost down quite substantially because we're not getting the kind of calls we're getting. And when I talk to seniors sometimes out on the door and they're saying to me, well, you were against fire. Well, I'm sorry, but I think the chances are that we're going to see a paramedic come to your door before someone from fire, hopefully. We don't know that, of course, but the point is we have to find a way to keep our finances in check. And this is an area that we have to be very clear about. Paramedics need more attention. We have to focus on them. They're not part of the 369 retention pay. They may be at some point if things don't change. Thank you.
Thank you. Ozzy, what are your thoughts?
I do agree with Councillor Fada that the paramedics need the most attention out of all 3. We're going through a negotiation process with them right now. I don't know where it's at this moment, as we haven't received an update from staff yet. But I think we should look at all 3: fire, police, and the paramedics, and look at where we could not reduce the numbers but increase it. And I know that we need more police officers on the road right now. Now, I don't know if we could work with the unions and possibly hire some part-timers just to keep the crime down and whatnot. We already did fire before I got there. Before I got back, they reduced the numbers quite a bit. And then last year we had that comprehensive risk assessment. We hired some more. I understand that some paramedics went to fire. I don't know the amount is. I do know from hearing from some of the paramedics that we're short-staffed, and like Councillor Fada said, these paramedics run ragged. Over 12,000 calls a year, and they're the least paid out of the 3. We're doing our best to get them up there, but I believe it's I don't know if it's a union issue or whatnot, but I believe we should get them up to the rate with the police officers and firemen. Thank you.
Thank you. Corey.
Admittedly, fire was a contentious issue for some time. And I think the former fire chief could have mitigated some of that contention had he communicated better with the firefighters, if he would have worked harder to build relationships with the firefighters. That said, we've had a comprehensive risk assessment done. We now have a master fire plan. I believe if we follow that fire master plan, that we're going to have the resources that we need to keep our community safe, and the fire service is going to have the resources that they need. Mr. Fada brought up a good point. These are expensive services, and a lot of when it comes to pay, as I understand it, Mr. Fada, the provincial government supports, essentially a raise all the time, right? And it's something that municipalities, wherever they are in Ontario, are challenged by. These services cost tens of millions of dollars. They do wonderful work for us. They risk their lives for us on a daily basis. They are stressed out. The paramedics, I know that there's a contract we're working on. We realigned the service because we were getting so many more calls for ambulances, quite frankly, than we were fire trucks. We have an aging population. We have to be sensitive to that. All of these services require our investment. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Matthew.
The 3 emergency services all do jobs that I would never do in a million years. I'm comfortable. I sit at a desk for my work. These people are on their feet. They're in high stress situations all the time. I don't think I could last a day. I am not going to come up here and say that we should do anything that will affect their service. I met with the president of the Firefighters Association, and he was running me through the master plan, and he was giving me this information that made sense to me, and he was telling me how many men that they need to have respond to a fire, which he said it was 12 recommended by the other fire associations in the province. And that's what we have on. Essentially, if we have one fire in the Sioux at one time, that's the whole response for the firefighters. Then they have to call people in for overtime, and overtime is where you incur more expenses. So I don't think reducing the amount of people is necessarily the way to do it. You end up having more expenses that way. You have to look at the volume of calls. To touch on the paramedics, I'm probably gonna run out of time. The paramedics definitely need more pay, or we need to really get with them and talk with them and see what they're looking for, because I have friends that are paramedics and they're definitely overutilized and under supported. Tying back into the fire as well though, actually all three of them, they're very much like IT. You pay them more for just being there and when you need them than when they're just sitting around, because let me tell you, when you need them, you want them. So that's the kind of support I want to give to them. Thanks. Thank
you, Matthew. Do we have rebuttal? Further thoughts, Frank?
Before the risk assessment, the will of council was to reduce the number of firefighters per shift from 17 to 13. After the comprehensive risk assessment, that number was changed to 15. So there was a kind of a midway point, which we arrived at. The issue of paramedics is something that we cannot keep shoving under the carpet. I've talked to a number of them, and they're a very disgruntled group. Maybe some of us don't realize it, but they're a very, very disgruntled group, and we as councillors better deal with this issue. The issue about the 369 retention pay, that's completely out of our hands. The only thing that we've ever had control over, as far as I can tell, is when we reduce we reduce fire from 78 to 68. The fact is, we have to take control of this situation, and the arbitration system that's controlled by the province has total control, and our hands are tied.
Thank you. Further thoughts?
I ran out of time, so I'm going to get on to the police now. So with the police, going door to door, that is a concern for a lot of residents in Ward 5. I do think that we can more efficiently use them. Not that we're being inefficient, but we could look at using data again, look at where most of the calls are coming from, at what times of day, and kind of base it on there for the presence to help mitigate those crimes that are occurring. I think that the police do a fantastic job. I think that there are some residents in the West End, some of the older residents that are concerned with some of the houses or some of the people that are driving around, or even where they live. They think, crime's going on, and I see it, right? I'm from an area that was less than desirable before, so you do see these sorts of things, and I think that we can definitely focus in on utilization. When I was speaking with the firefighters, going back to that, there was talks of getting rid of one of the firehouses and making another one that's going to kind of take over two of them. I think before we do anything like that, we need to also look at where the bulk of our fire responses are, because if we're getting more calls in more areas, we want to have a shorter time for that. So there's a lot we could look at, and I'm willing to work with all three of the groups to get it done. So
thank you. Last call. All right, Ozzy, you are up first again.
Again.
And it's Mr. Murphy's turn.
All right, Ozzy, how do you respond to residents who believe that investing in the arts, culture, tourism, and festivals and events is a waste of taxpayer dollars?
I don't think it's a waste of taxpayer dollars. I think if we invest in something that's going to attract tourism, I think it's a good investment. Repeat the question again. Sorry.
If someone were to say to you that investing in arts, culture, tourism, festivals, and events, that's a waste of money, you would say?
No, it's not a waste of money, because it brings tourism in. Whether somebody comes in overnight, like last night we had the John Cougar Mellencamp concert. You're gonna eat at the restaurant. You're gonna stay 1 or 2 nights in a hotel. Depends where they're coming from, and I think that we should also, onto this note, is possibly look at finding an outside agency to do more with bringing people in for this arts and culture. Thank you.
Thank you, Ozzy. Corey, what's your take on this?
I think it's important that we have a vibrant arts and culture community within Sault Ste. Marie, because many young people who we hope to migrate here really rely on a vibrant arts and culture scene outside their work lives. I think there needs to be a lot done for tourism. I believe that we are missing an opportunity on a couple of points. One is we have some of the best freshwater boating anywhere in the world. We have a marina that is subpar. We need to improve our marina drastically so we can get boaters stopping here and spending their money. We're missing out on millions of dollars a year over the spring and summer months. We need to take a look at how we can attract one of the biggest and fastest growing industries in tourism, people who drive around in RVs. Okay, we're halfway to pretty much anywhere in Sault Ste. Marie. And I think we're missing out on a bunch of people who pass through here or stay in a Walmart parking lot. I believe that we could have a full service, not large scale, but small scale park where these people could drive and park close to our downtown and enjoy some of the amenities of it. We need to do more for our museum. It hasn't had a budget increase in a long time. That's something I would be supportive of, and I'm very pleased that council gave some extra money to the art gallery and to the Bush Plane over the course of the last term. Thank you.
Thanks, Corey. Matthew.
So arts and culture and the whole jazz is very important to me. I actually serve on the museum board as the treasurer, so I too would be in favor of the museum. However, if I did get on as councillor, I would have to step down, and that's okay. They know that, and I'm accepting of that. I think culture is a very big thing. Tourism comes with that. If there's a reason to come to Sault Ste. Marie because we have this beautiful culture, and we're a mixing pot. We're not just an Italian city. We can do food culture. There's tons of stuff there. There's tons of great artists. Why are we not setting stuff up on the waterfront? You can have people painting, drawing, doing any sort of art, playing music, all along the waterfront. And like Corey said, our marina, it's just, it is subpar. You can go to smaller cities in Michigan like Petoskey or Charlevoix. There's always stuff going down there. They have a Venetian festival in Charlevoix I went to this year. It was fantastic. Why are we not doing something like that? Carrying on to that, even smaller things like theater, big, important. We could do the concerts at the GFL, but even the little things. I've gone to Sudbury just to see a production of Rocky Horror Picture Show. And like, that's just and I ended up spending 2 nights in Sudbury, spending money there, going to Costco, like just little things like that bring people in. I'm excited that this year we are doing Rocky Horror at the Grand. So I'm going to look forward to going to that, but that's a good start. And I would love to support anything that's going on in the city like that. I love doing things. It's a big thing, right? A lot of young people move because there's nothing to do. That's because we're missing that arts and culture. Thanks.
Thank you, Matthew. Frank.
If you talk to Ian McMillan, to the McGuffins who just live just outside the city, talk to Donna Hilsinger, you'll see the passion of these people when it comes to this area, tourism, the arts, the culture. I've seen ships come here. One, for example, that comes here that opens right up and they do a full-fledged concert right by the Bondar tent. It was fantastic. There were people like, it was just like something right out of Woodstock. You might know about that.
I was a child.
We have to realize professionals. We're trying to bring professionals to Sault Ste. Marie, doctors, lawyers, accountants, whatever. The point being is that their families want this kind of thing, the kind of thing that you will see in Toronto. I always say, do we want to look more like Kapuskasing as a small town, or do we want to look more like London or Ottawa or perhaps Toronto? This is the kind of thing that we have to make available to the people. Now, next year, there's 20 cruise ships coming to Sault Ste. Marie. They're going to stop in here. Those people are going to be getting off. They're going to be here on average of 10 hours per day. Now, Councillor Shoemaker made reference to a sort of a shuttle service. If we can shuttle those people into the downtown area, for example, they're going to get a chance to visit some of the restaurants, the malls, and so on and so forth. The point being is we have to be very aggressive. Our Bush Plane Museum, it's nice. It's nice, but it needs to diversify. I was talking to a very important businessman locally, and he said very clearly, they don't want to diversify. They have to diversify. Just looking in there and looking at planes is not the answer. Bring in engines that people can view. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
Rebuttal?
Do you want to go
No,
first?
no, you go ahead.
Sure?
Yeah.
I just didn't get a chance to reference the festivals. I think we have to do a good job of promoting more festivals in our community, and I'll tell you why. There are a lot of people within our community who don't have the means to go on a vacation in the summer, and there are families who immensely enjoy Rotary Fest. I was down to some of the celebrations and parties they had on Queen Street over the course of the last while. There are kids down there smiling and laughing and having fun. It's important to create those opportunities locally for those of us who aren't fortunate enough to leave town. They need to be able to experience different things. They need to experience our arts and culture. They need to learn more about the world outside of Sault Ste. Marie, and it's incumbent upon us as leaders in the community, potentially, to provide that opportunity to our families in Sault Ste. Marie.
Ozzy, are you next?
Yes, I am. Sorry. That's okay, Corey. Corey had mentioned to the RVers staying at Walmart. Well, why wouldn't they stay there? It's free. I remember years ago, a group of families that own some campsites around town. They came to council to try to get us to keep them from parking at Walmart, but it didn't. They didn't succeed in it. I had an idea as for the Norgoma. I did support removing it, but I do support waiting till we find a permanent site for it. I don't believe in whoever spends the money to move it someplace temporary and then we have to move it again. Keep it there as long as we can. I had an idea to put it at the Suncor site, if the city was successful to bring it to the Suncor site, and dry dock it there, and then you have the Bush Plain, the Clerg, then you have the Norgoma, and possibly do an overnight camping site there for everyone. But of course, there's certain people on council that have to get rid of the Norgoma. They can't wait because that's on their agenda. I think if people would listen. It's not like being at home, I have to keep talking.
Now where Frank lives.
It appears we're all very passionate about this subject. I also support keeping the Norgoma. It's the only ship of its kind left. It's a great thing. I think that they can do a lot with it. I liked it when I was a child, and I think that they have a good board now, and it's a good group. Tying into that, I didn't get a chance to mention other things. So we're in the dead center of all sorts of natural beauty. We could do fishing tourism, hunting tourism. One thing that somebody brought up to me actually that I love the idea, and I do want to work with her if I end up getting in to get this to happen, is let's organize some sort of Aboriginal tourism. We have all this historical Aboriginal area around us. Let's use that. Let's bring people on tours of the sites and the areas where people were raised and where they lived and experienced the culture. It's fantastic. Algoma University does a lot of involvement with that. I know when I went there, I went to every Aboriginal event that they had. Very, very eye-opening, and it's interesting. And I think that we could really capitalize on that. We're in the perfect location.
Thank you. Last call. Frank?
We got Search Mount. I've talked to the Snowmobile Association recently. There's so much untapped as far as the snowmobile trails. In North Bay, they're maximizing. We are doing a fraction of what North Bay is doing in terms of snowmobile trails. We deal with issues here of accessibility, where trails can be set up so that people can leave the hotel, the major hotel, let's say on Great Northern Road, and then take off to the trails. Something that we're not tapping into. As far as the Norgoma, again, it's something that it's going to cost us money to remove it. What I've seen happen there in the last little while, channeled mostly by young people in this town, and we're all going to be invited to the Strive event because it's all made up of young people. We got to listen to our young people and encourage them, not discourage them. So we have to realize that there's a lot of things here that we can do together, and if we have to listen to our young people, we have to listen to the people that know what they're talking about, and our local businesses. They have a large stake in this. Thank you very much.
Can I have one more? Please?
You're the moderator. I'm not saying that.
Well, you know what? We didn't let Frank have an extra.
I'm usually shy when it comes to this. It's just.
You know what? We didn't let Frank continue with a second rebuttal.
Okay.
My apologies.
I'll listen because it's you. If it was Tim, I would have.
I like the way you think.
I just really appreciate all of your passion on that subject.
It's just one about the shipping.
Okay.
Corey, I think we're on our last question.
Are we?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Things gone very quickly. Yeah. Corey Gardy is up next, and the question is from Lorna Rudolph.
This is a two-part question.
Oh, ouch.
The changes to the Municipal Act require municipalities to fill positions for a municipal ombudsman, a lobby registrar, an integrity commissioner, and an auditor general. First part, what steps would you take to promote public scrutiny and participation in the appointment of these officers? And two, would you support a review of the appointments of each of these officers by each newly appointed council?
Sure. That's not my answer. I'm ready for I'm just going to look at. So I think the local council should be commended for the current council should be commended for some of the efforts they made to address accountability and transparency. Their in-caucus meetings, I believe, are recorded now. A lot of the meetings are public. They have an outside party looking at complaints. They've improved the process by which the public could make complaints. Essentially, the public couldn't make complaints before. You had to be a councillor to make a complaint about the councillor or the mayor, which was very silly. If someone, again, I'll be honest, I believe that the city is doing good work in the area of accountability and transparency and good government. I wouldn't bring one of these motions, but like any other, I would consider it. And if the will of council thought that it was a good idea, I would really think hard about supporting it. But right now, I think we have the mechanisms in place for our community to be comfortable knowing that they're getting good governance. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Matthew.
So the difficulty with the first part is I don't know the legality of what we could do to scrutinize said person or get the public involved in their hiring. I'm not sure what approach we could take to that, but reviewing them every 4 years is a similar situation. Would every 4 years, would the new council be allowed to appoint someone new? Is that what you were kind of getting at?
Review the operation of whoever has been in that position, and if you feel it's necessary, remove them and appoint someone new.
I think that's it's a touchy subject, just because, in my opinion, I think if someone's scrutinizing my work, I want somebody who doesn't like me more than somebody who does. That way, they're giving more of a. They're more honest with their opinions of me. They would be more critical, I guess, in any little mistakes that I make. So I would want that. Having them be able to appoint somebody new might not necessarily favor, or it might favor them, which would say, hey, maybe they don't get along with that person, or historically that person's been really harsh. Let's get someone a little easier in there who's going to be less scrutinizing of the work we're doing. So it's a difficult situation. I'd need to actually look into it a little bit more and figure out more, maybe meet with the ratepayers to see what their opinion on it is, and come to terms with that.
Thank you, Matthew. Mr. Fata.
Thank you. We're dealing with something here that is legally mandated. So first of all, so we had no choice. We have to do this. I think accountability and transparency. It always comes down to that. And if you can't swear by that, then really you have to be, well, you're just telling people that you're going to talk from both sides of your mouth, which I don't think anybody should. The Integrity Commissioner went through an RFP. She was hired, and she's an excellent person, and she's already dealt with one issue already. So we are trying to move in the right direction. I think we made headway, but there's always more to go. But we have to be open-minded. The Agenda Review Committee used to have 2 councillors, along with the mayor and the clerk and the CAO. I think that's something that we have to look at again. I really believe that, because I thought that was very important. You want to include people's inputs, because it's like pulling teeth for people to want to get a point brought forward on council. How do I get on council? I'm going to show up there and I'm going to put my hand up and I want to be able to speak. We got to make it possible for people to have an avenue. We are the contact people for the public. I always tell people this: if you want something brought forward to the mayor and council, tell me and I'll relay that message. That's part of what I'm doing here. Transparency is very, very important. The voting as far as being recorded, that's very important. Everything in caucus is all recorded, so it's all available to the public. Transparency.
Thank you, Frank. And Ozzy.
I do agree with the other three here is transparency and accountability. I do agree with Councillor Fat as the Agenda Review Committee should go back to the way it was, should have a councillor with the mayor and staff, and everyone should have a few minutes to talk. And unless there's hate speech, which we had a gentleman that was going to come a little while ago to talk about it, and which he was denied from our city clerk. And then this way here, we could decide what goes on the council meeting, not what staff and the mayor decide what goes on. Because there's some issues that should have been on a few weeks ago that aren't going to come on till after the meeting, which are serious issues. And we were all expecting it to come on. I also think that the integrity commissioner that we hired does do a wonderful job, and I have to correct Councillor Fata that hasn't taken care of one issue, she's taken care of two. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rebuttal? Go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, I'm just going to have to chime in too really quick. I do strongly believe in transparency as well. It's something I omitted earlier. I think that transparency is important. I think given current technology, we can put everything that council does online, make it wide open, much like the others were saying as well. I think that the transparency commissioner, or what's her? Integrity commissioner is a good step. I don't personally know her, but I mean, it sounds like she's doing a good job. The agenda, so that's pretty important to have somebody from council involved as well. And like Frank was saying, it discourages the citizens when you can't get something brought up to council. Making it as easy as possible, reaching out to your councillor, and being assured that it can actually get on to a council meeting. We're not there for ourselves. We want to be there for the people. And if they're not getting represented, no matter how big or how small their issue may be to us, it's big enough to them to bring it up. So I think that it's only fair that they get their time.
Thank you very much. Last call? Yes, sir, Mr. Fata. Corey, are you next?
If I could.
We took over $400,000 out of the Economic Development Corporation, which I think serves a very, very important purpose. They're the people that are responsible to bring in industry, bring in IT, bring in satellite offices of the OLG. They are a very important tool. We took $400,000 out of that, and we created what's called Future Sault Ste. Marie. And then when people say, well, can we come and see what's going on at these meetings? Taxpayers, they're told no. No, you can't. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. And that's the kind of stuff that we have to deal with. Transparency, accountability. How can you speak about one thing and then turn around and say something like that? We've created, this has been a job creator. We've hired a bunch of mostly young people, which I'm fine with, but I want to see what they do. If that money is well spent, that's good. We give them 1 year, see what happens. This is a 3-year project. Also, 10 minutes before council. I think people should have the opportunity to come before council and have 10 minutes where they can bring up an issue. It's what we should be doing, being transparent, being open. People feel like that's like pulling teeth to try and come to council.
Thank you very much. Corey, you have the last word.
So I wasn't going to comment on economic development, but Mr. Fata brought it up. I think the work to realign what was going on in economic development in our community was a wise one. I think the money is going to be used wisely. He says he's not against young people, but when we talk about young people being hired to consider where our community needs to go, that's what we need. Now, Future Sault Ste. Marie, I believe, and agree with Mr. Fad in the sense that they need to be more transparent, and I believe there are efforts to do that moving forward. There were redundancies between the city, the Economic Development Corporation. The Economic Development Corporation had an accounting department. It had an HR person. It had a communications person. The city has all those. It had an IT person. That money being reallocated or addressing the redundancies between the city and the Economic Development Corporation was a wise move. And I believe over the course of the last several years, the Economic Development Corporation could have done a better job. And I'm hopeful with the efforts as moving forward that we're going to get more bang for our dollar. And I believe firmly that we're going to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, I appreciate all the information and the decorum that you demonstrated this afternoon.
I wish I demonstrated decorum.
This is our last debate for the upcoming municipal election. Of course, on October 22nd, time is coming. So we certainly hope here at ONNtv that you feel informed. And if you want to review some of the ward debates or this mayoral debate, you can go to Sioux Online and you can go to VOD and you can go to YouTube and just search ONNtv, and all of that information will be there for you. A huge thank you to the Sault Ste. Marie Association of Ratepayers. Lorna, pleasure working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Tim, thanks a lot. A special thank you very much to Ozzie Grandinetti, Corey Gardy, Matthew Scott, Frank Fata. Good luck, gentlemen.
Advance polls are open tomorrow.
Yes, tomorrow is the
99
last
Foster
one.
Drive.
Last one, so all day tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching ONNtv, and don't forget there's always something on TV.